Captain Paul Hayes had commanded the Pacific Guardian for 3 years. In that time, he had dealt with mining disputes, rescued broken ships, and once helped move a science station before a solar flare hit it. He had never fired his weapons at anyone. He had certainly never faced an alien warship. That was about to change. Contact bearing 270. Range 8 million kilometers in closing. Lieutenant Jake Foster called from the tactical station. His voice was steady, but Paul could hear the tension underneath. It matches the hostile signature from Station Outreach 7. Paul stood on the bridge with his hands behind his back. He looked calm, even though his heart was beating fast. Through the front window, space looked peaceful. Just stars and darkness. But somewhere out there, a devourer ship was coming. Behind them, the Venya ship Wandering Song was running for its life. Weapon status? Paul asked. Railguns charged. Missiles loaded. Point defense systems online, Jake replied. But sir, we do not know what we are fighting. Then I guess we are about to learn. Communications, open a channel to the Wandering Song. Lieutenant Sophie Grant nodded. Channel open, sir. Wandering Song, this is Captain Paul Hayes of the Pacific Guardian. We are moving to intercept the hostile vessel. What can you tell us about what we face? The reply came through the translation system. Pacific Guardian, this is Vena Captain Soral. The Devourer ship is a Harvester-class vessel. They use energy weapons and boarding craft. They will try to breach your hull and take your resources. Your ship is too small. You should run. Paul smiled, but it was not a happy smile. With respect, Captain Soral, we did not come all this way to run. Continue to Mars, we will buy you time. Human vessel, you do not understand. The Devourers do not negotiate. They show no mercy. Good. Neither do we when innocent people are threatened. Pacific Guardian out. Paul turned to his crew. The bridge was small. Just 12 officers running a ship built for patrol work, not war against unknown aliens. But every face he saw looked determined. They knew what they were doing. They knew why it mattered. Jake, I want targeting solutions ready the moment that ship comes into range. Sophie, record everything. If this goes badly, Earth Command needs to know what they face. Helm, put us between the Wandering Song and that hostile. Yes, sir, Lieutenant Chris Warren replied from the helm. The Pacific Guardian's engines burned bright, moving the ship into position. The Devourer ship appeared on their sensors like a dark spot, something that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. As it came closer, Paul felt his stomach tighten. The vessel was twice the size of the Pacific Guardian. Its hull was covered in strange bumps and pieces that might be weapons or might be parts stolen from other ships. They are hailing us, Sophie said. She sounded surprised. Put it through. The sound that came from the speakers made Paul want to cover his ears. It was harsh and mechanical, with clicking and scraping sounds mixed in. The translation computer struggled with it. Finally, words appeared on the main screen. Move. We claim the Vena vessel. Interfere and be harvested. Like hell, Paul said quietly. Then louder. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Paul Hayes of the Pacific Guardian. The Vena ship is under our protection. Break off your pursuit or we will open fire. The response was immediate. The Devourer ship's front section lit up with angry red light. A beam of superheated plasma shot across the space between them. The Pacific Guardian's shields flared, alarm screaming as the defensive systems absorbed the hit. Shields down to 70%. Jake called out. Sir, they are not playing around. Neither are we. Return fire. All weapons. The Pacific Guardian's railguns fired, throwing metal slugs at incredible speeds. At the same time, missiles launched from the tubes, their engines burning as they raced toward the enemy. The Devourer ship's defenses activated, destroying some missiles, but the railgun rounds hammered into its hull, tearing away chunks of metal and whatever else made up its armor. Debris exploded from the alien vessel's side, but it did not slow down. Instead, it accelerated, trying to come alongside the Pacific Guardian. They are trying to get close enough to board us, Jake said. Multiple launch signatures. They are sending boarding craft. Point defense, take them out. Helm. Evasive pattern Delta 7. The Pacific Guardian twisted and turned, its small engines firing in complex patterns as it tried to avoid both the energy weapons and the boarding craft. Point defense lasers shot out, destroying 3 of the 5 small craft, but 2 got through. Brace for impact, Paul ordered. The boarding craft hit the ship's hull with a loud clang. Magnetic clamps held them in place. On the damage control screen, Paul could see that they were cutting through the outer hull. He grabbed the ship-wide intercom. All hands prepare to repel boarders. This is not a drill. Marines to defensive positions. Engineering, seal the blast doors. Throughout the ship, crew members scrambled to defensive positions. The Pacific Guardian had been designed with internal security in mind, but nobody had ever expected to fight aliens inside. Marines grabbed weapons while engineers sealed doors, trying to contain the breach. On the bridge, Paul made a decision that would be talked about for years. Jake, lock all weapons on the Devourer ship's power core. I can see it right there, that cluster of energy signatures in the middle of their ship. Sir, that will take everything we have. If we miss, we will not miss. Sophie, send a message to the Wandering Song. Tell them to keep going no matter what happens to us. Sir, that is an order. The Pacific Guardian came around, showing its undamaged side to the Devourer ship. Every weapon that could fire was aimed at one single point, the alien vessel's power core. Paul thought about his wife back on Earth. He thought about his daughter in university. He thought about the Vena families running for their lives. He thought about Danny Morrison and Karen Phillips, who had answered a call for help. Fire, Paul said. Everything the Pacific Guardian had was unleashed at once. Railgun rounds, missiles, and laser fire all converged on the Devourer ship's power core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien vessel's middle section erupted in a massive explosion. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as systems overloaded and failed. The Devourer ship broke apart, its front and back sections tumbling away from each other in a cloud of debris and escaping atmosphere. On the bridge, the crew cheered, but Paul was not celebrating yet. Damage report. And somebody get down to those boarding points. We still have hostiles inside the ship. What happened next would become legend in Earth's military history. Inside the Pacific Guardian, Marines and crew faced off against Devourer soldiers. The creatures were part biological and part machine, nightmares of metal and flesh that fought with terrible efficiency. The battle raged through corridors and storage bays. It took an hour to clear the ship. 8 good people died in that hour. But when it was done, when the last Devourer had been stopped and the breach point sealed, Paul stood on his damaged bridge. Smoke drifted through the air. Half the screens were dark, but they had won. He opened a channel to Earth Command. This is Captain Paul Hayes of the Pacific Guardian. The hostile vessel has been neutralized. The Vena ship Wandering Song is secure and proceeding to Mars orbit. Request medical assistance and repair crews. He paused, then added, and sir, you should probably prepare. I do not think that was the only Devourer ship out there. I think we just started something bigger. Admiral Hamilton's voice came back across the vast distance. Understood, Captain. Well done. Help is on the way. The Wandering Song continued to Mars, escorted now by the battered but victorious Pacific Guardian. Captain Sorrell sent a message that the translation computers struggled with at first. Then they realized he was trying to express gratitude in a way that matched human emotions. Captain Hayes, your people answered our call when you did not have to. You fought for us when you barely knew us. The Vena will remember this. We will tell this story to our children and their children, how humanity stood between us and death even though we were strangers. Paul sat in his command chair, exhausted. His ship was damaged. His crew was hurt. 8 people would never go home. But thousands of Vena would live because of what they had done. Captain Sorrell, tell your people they are safe now. Welcome to our solar system. On Earth, the news of the battle spread quickly. Humanity had fought aliens and won, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. The Devourers would come back. They would bring more ships. Humanity needed to prepare. President Morris addressed the world from her office. Her face was serious but determined. Today our people fought and died protecting strangers who asked for help. They did not run. They did not hide. They stood up and said that we will not allow innocent people to be harmed. Not in our space. Not on our watch. The Vena are coming here. They will land near Mars to repair their ship, and we will help them. Because that is who we are. That is what humanity does. At Station Outreach 7, Danny Morrison and Karen Phillips watched the whole thing through their sensors. They had tracked every moment of the battle. They had held their breath when it looked bad. They had celebrated when the Pacific Guardian won. We started this, Danny said quietly. We did the right thing, Karen replied. We answered a call for help, I know. But now what? The Devourers know we are here. They will come back. The coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago, but Danny Morrison still held the cup in his hands. He sat at his workstation staring at the same empty screens he had been watching for months. Outside the small window, Neptune hung in the distance, a blue giant against the black of space. The monitoring station had been his home for 6 months now, and most days were exactly the same. Nothing happened. Nobody called. The universe stayed quiet. Karen Phillips worked at the station next to him. She was running tests on the equipment, making sure everything worked properly. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The station existed to listen for signals from space, to find out if anyone else was out there. So far they had found nothing but silence. Danny took another sip of cold coffee and made a face. He looked over at Karen and said, "Another day of absolutely nothing." Karen did not look up from her screen. "You complain about this every single day. What did you expect? Aliens to call us? A guy can hope, right?" That was when everything changed. The console in front of Danny exploded with noise and flashing lights. Warning sounds filled the small station. Danny dropped his coffee cup and it floated away in the low gravity. His hands moved quickly across the controls, trying to understand what was happening. Every screen showed something different, all of them displaying information that should not exist. Karen spun around in her chair. Her eyes went wide. "Danny, what is that?" "I do not know." His voice shook slightly. He pulled up more data, his heart beating fast in his chest. "This is a real signal. Someone is sending us a message. A direct transmission aimed right at us. That is impossible. Nobody knows we are here except Earth." Danny kept working, his fingers flying across the touchscreen. The signal was like nothing in their computer files. It had patterns and structures that looked almost like language, but different from anything humans had ever made. He felt sweat on his forehead despite the cool air in the station. "Karen, I think someone just called us, and I do not think they are from Earth." Karen moved to his station. Her hand shook as she reached for the communication controls. "We need to check this first. The rules say we have to verify everything before we respond." The rules were made by people who never thought this would really happen. Danny looked at her. His face was serious. "We are 40 astronomical units from home. By the time we ask for permission and get an answer back, whoever sent this might be gone forever. So what do you want to do?" Danny took a deep breath. His finger hovered over the button that would send a response. "I want to answer the phone." He pressed the button and started sending a reply. He used the same kind of mathematical patterns that the alien signal had used. It was simple, maybe even crude, but it was an answer. For 3 long minutes, they sent their message into space. Then they waited. The reply came back in 90 seconds. This time the signal was different. It felt more urgent somehow. The patterns changed and adapted, as if whoever sent it was learning their language in real time. Karen worked quickly to understand it while Danny tracked where it came from. "They are not in our solar system," Danny said quietly. "The signal started at least 12 light years away. This message is old, Karen, really old." "Then how are they answering so fast?" "I do not think they are." Danny showed her the timestamps. "I think they sent out a probe. A relay station of some kind. It is changing their original message based on what we send back." Karen's screen flashed. "Danny, I figured out part of it." "I can translate some of this. What does it say?" She read slowly. Her voice shook. "It says urgent, emergency, need help right now. Wrong person received this. Please help." Danny and Karen looked at each other across the small station. Somewhere far away in space, someone had sent a call for help. They had been trying to reach someone else, but instead they found humanity. They found Earth. "We need to tell Earth Command right now," Karen said. Danny was already writing the message. "They are not going to believe this. I do not care if they believe it. We just made first contact with aliens, and whoever is out there needs help." Danny marked the message as extremely urgent. He attached all the data from the transmission and sent it toward Earth at the speed of light. It would take 4 hours to reach home and another 4 hours to get a response. 8 hours of waiting. While they waited, Danny and Karen kept talking to the alien probe. They learned more with each message. The aliens called themselves the Vena. They were peaceful people who traveled through space in big ships. Their ship had met something dangerous, something the probe called the Devourers. The Vena had been trying to call their friends, a group called the Hierarchy, when their message got misdirected to Earth instead. They sent this probe through some kind of faster-than-light tunnel, Karen explained. She was more excited now than scared. That is how it got here so fast. They were aiming for Hierarchy space, but they missed. How far off were they? In space terms, not much. Maybe a few light years, but that was enough to hit us instead of their friends. Danny leaned back in his chair. The meaning of it all washed over him. So we are not who they wanted to find. No, but we are who they found. The question is, what do we do about it? Before Danny could think of an answer, his console lit up again. But this time it was not the Vena probe. It was a new signal, harsh and angry sounding. The monitoring software seemed to pull back from it as if scared. Danny felt cold as he looked at the data. Karen, I think we just found the Devourers. The new signal was nothing like the Vena transmission. It was full of sharp, jagged patterns that hurt to look at. Danny traced its origin point and felt his stomach drop. It was close, much closer than the Vena probe. And it was moving toward them. Karen pulled up more data. Danny, this signal is some kind of scan. Like they are looking for something. Looking for what? I think they followed the Vena distress call. They found the probe, and now they know we are here. Danny stared at the screen. 6 months of boredom had just turned into the most important moment in human history. Somewhere out in the dark, 2 alien forces were near Earth. One needed help. The other seemed dangerous, and humanity had no idea what to do. We need to send another message to Earth, Danny said. Right now? Tell them everything. Tell them that something is coming. Karen was already typing. What if Earth Command tells us to stop talking to them? What if they tell us to shut down and stay quiet? Danny looked at the Vena transmission on his screen. He thought about someone out there, scared and running, who had asked for help. He thought about the harsh signal of the Devourers hunting through space. Then we have 8 hours to learn as much as we can. 8 hours to help the Vena before Earth tells us to stop. They worked through the night, if you could call it night in space where the sun never rose or set. Message after message went back and forth between the station and the Vena probe. Danny and Karen learned about a wider galaxy, full of different species and ancient conflicts. They learned about the hierarchy, a group of peaceful races who worked together. They learned about the Devourers who took everything they found and destroyed what was left. And they learned that the Vena ship was dying, that there were families on board, children, people who just wanted to survive. When the reply finally came from Earth Command, it was short and direct. Stand by, do not send any more messages. Wait for orders. Danny looked at Karen. What do we do? She looked at the Vena transmission, then at the Earth Command message, then back at Danny. We wait. But we keep listening, because something tells me this is just the beginning. Outside the window, Neptune hung unchanged in the darkness. But the universe around it had become much more complicated in the last few hours. Humanity was no longer alone, and whether they were ready or not, they were about to find out what that really meant. 6 weeks after the battle near Neptune, the wandering song floated in space near Mars. Human repair ships surrounded it, working to fix the damage from the Devourer attack. The Vena ship was huge, 3 kilometers of rotating metal that housed entire communities. Its hull showed the scars of battle, but human and Vena engineers worked together to heal those wounds. Dr. Helen Carter floated outside the ship in zero gravity. Her magnetic boots kept her attached to the alien metal. Through her helmet she could see Mars below, red and dusty. Further away, Earth hung like a blue and white jewel. Behind her, a Vena engineer worked with her to install a new shield generator. This should work with your existing power systems, Helen said into her communication link. Our engineers changed it to fit your ship. The Vena engineer's response came through the translator. Your species learns quickly, Helen Carter. When we sent our distress call, we hoped to find the hierarchy. Instead, we found something perhaps more valuable. We found friends who answer calls that were not meant for them. Helen smiled inside her helmet. The Vena looked nothing like humans. Their bodies were radial and plant-like, with many limbs coming from a central core. But she had learned that they were kind, curious, and deeply devoted to their families. In many ways, they were not so different from humanity. Down on Earth, a different kind of building was happening. Admiral Greg Hamilton sat at a conference table with Captain Sorrell, who appeared through a holographic projection. Between them were tablets showing military plans, star maps, and intelligence reports. The Devourers will come, Sorrell said. His translated voice was serious. The ship your Captain Hayes destroyed was only a scout. When it does not report back, they will send more, bigger ships, hunter fleets. How long do we have? Weeks, perhaps. A few months if we are lucky. The Devourers move slowly between stars, but once they arrive, they never stop. Greg studied the star chart in front of him. You mentioned allies. This hierarchy. Can they help us? Sorrel's holographic form shifted in a way that meant uncertainty. The hierarchy is powerful, yes. They control many star systems. They have fought the Devourers to a stalemate for generations. But they are also careful. They may not want to protect a species they do not know. Even if that species just saved one of their allies? You saved us, Greg Hamilton. The hierarchy did not. That is a difference they will notice. President Catherine Morris had been listening from her seat at the head of the table. Admiral Captain Sorrel, what you are describing is a situation where Earth gets pulled into an interstellar war. I need to understand what that means for my planet. Sorrel's projection turned to face her. It means, President Catherine Morris, that humanity's isolation has ended. You have been found by the galaxy, and the galaxy is not always kind. But it also means you have friends now. The Vena will stand with you, and I believe if we approach them the right way, the hierarchy might be convinced to stand with you too. How do we approach them? We go to them directly. A diplomatic mission to hierarchy space. We bring evidence of what happened here. Humans and Vena together, showing that cooperation between species is not just possible but powerful. Greg leaned forward. That is a long journey. How far are we talking? 43 light years to the nearest hierarchy station. With our FTL relay network, messages take time. But the journey itself, using human ships modified with Vena FTL technology, would take about 4 months. Everyone in the room was quiet. They were all thinking the same thing. Faster than light travel. Humanity had dreamed about it for hundreds of years. Now aliens they had met by accident were offering to help them achieve it. President Morris made her decision. Prepare a mission. I want our best people. Scientists, diplomats, and military personnel. Admiral, you will command our fleet. Captain Sorrel, we will need Vena representatives as well. It will be done, Sorrel said. Over the next 3 weeks, humanity prepared for its first journey to the stars. The mission would have 3 ships. The Pacific Guardian, now repaired and equipped with experimental Vena FTL drives. A new exploration vessel called the Armstrong, designed specifically for deep space diplomacy. And a Vena escort ship, the Morning Wind, crewed by volunteers from the Wandering Song. Danny Morrison and Karen Phillips received their transfer orders from Station Outreach 7. They had been the first humans to make contact with aliens. Now they were being assigned to the Armstrong as the mission's communication specialists. We started this, Danny said. He watched Neptune get smaller through the shuttle window as they left the station. It is only right we see it through. Are you scared? Karen asked, terrified, but also more excited than I have ever been. We are going to meet other alien species, Karen. Maybe several. The galaxy is suddenly so much bigger and more complicated than we ever imagined. And more dangerous. Yeah, that too. The fleet left Earth orbit on a clear October morning. Billions of people around the world watched. The 3 ships activated their FTL drives one at a time. Space seemed to shimmer and bend around them. Then they vanished, gone from Earth's solar system in an instant. The journey through FTL space was strange. The ships existed in a state that human science was only beginning to understand. They moved through higher dimensions where the normal rules of physics twisted and changed. But the Vena had been doing this for generations. Their guidance kept the human ships on course. 4 months later, exactly as predicted, the fleet emerged from FTL near something that defied imagination. The hierarchy station was a structure of impossible size. It was a ring that orbited 2 stars, 50,000 kilometers across. It housed dozens of species and hundreds of millions of beings. My God. Helen Carter whispered from her station on the Armstrong. It is beautiful. Admiral Hamilton stood on the bridge watching as the station's traffic control system sent them approach instructions. The messages came in dozens of languages. The computer identified one as similar to Vena. Well, Greg said, this should be interesting. Communications, open a channel. Let us introduce ourselves. On the hierarchy station in council chambers where representatives from dozens of species met to make decisions, an alert appeared on a screen. A new ship had arrived. Unknown design. Unknown species on board. The council speaker, a being called Nexus Prime, studied the data. Nexus Prime species had founded the hierarchy thousands of years ago. They were old and wise and had seen many things. But this was new. They come with the Vena, Nexus Prime noted. And the ship design shows advanced technology despite limited FTL capability. Curious. Should we grant them an audience? Another council member asked. Nexus Prime made a gesture of agreement. Yes, I wish to meet these humans who answered a distress call not meant for them. I wish to know if they are as interesting as their actions suggest. The invitation was sent within the hour. Humanity had reached the galactic stage. Now they had to prove they belonged there. Admiral Greg Hamilton walked into the council chamber. President Catherine Morris was beside him. She had insisted on making the journey herself. Captain Sorrell walked with them. Behind them came a small group: Dr. Helen Carter, Danny Morrison, Karen Phillips, and Captain Paul Hayes. His actions at Neptune had made him famous. The council chamber was designed for many different species. Some parts were filled with water for aquatic beings. Other parts had thick atmosphere for species from high-pressure worlds. There were perches for bird-like races and low-gravity platforms for species from small planets. In the center, a neutral zone welcomed the diplomatic corps. Nexus Prime waited for them. The being looked like floating crystals held together by energy fields. When Nexus Prime spoke, the translator made it English. "Welcome to the Hierarchy Station, humans of Earth. I am Nexus Prime, speaker for the Collective Council. We have reviewed your transmission and the evidence you provided. The story of how you came to be here is quite remarkable." President Morris stepped forward. Her years of diplomatic experience served her well, even in this unprecedented situation. "Speaker Nexus Prime, on behalf of humanity, thank you for this audience. We come seeking understanding and we hope alliance. Our species has only just learned we are not alone, and already we find ourselves caught in a conflict not of our making. The conflict with the Devourers," Nexus Prime said. "Yes, this is a war that has raged for longer than your species has had written language. The Devourers are a plague, consuming everything they find. The hierarchy has fought them to a stalemate, but we have never been able to defeat them completely." "Why not?" Helen asked. Then she looked embarrassed for speaking without permission. But Nexus Prime seemed amused. An excellent question from one so young. The answer is complex. The Devourers are not one species or even one group mind. They are more like a disease, a pattern that spreads and corrupts. Destroy one fleet and another appears elsewhere. We contain them, push them back, but they always return. Captain Sorrell spoke up, which is why the Vena were traveling through uncharted space. We sought new worlds far from the conflict zones. Instead, we found the Devourers had spread farther than anyone knew. "And you led them to Earth," another council member said. "This being species was called the Guardians. You put this young species in danger." "We led them nowhere intentionally," Sorrell replied. The negotiations went on for a week. The hierarchy was impressed by many things about humanity. They liked how quickly humans learned and adapted. They were amazed by how fast humanity had integrated Vena technology into their ships. But most of all, they were impressed by the military response to the Devourer attack. The Pacific Guardian had destroyed a Harvester-class vessel despite being smaller and outgunned. That showed both courage and smart tactics, but the hierarchy was careful. They had seen other species join the alliance before, only to break when the Devourers came in force. They needed to know that humanity could stand strong when things got bad. The test came in the form of a joint military operation. Long-range scouts had found a Devourer formation moving toward a colony world on the edge of hierarchy space. The colony was home to a species called the Tlaran, peaceful farmers and artists who had only recently joined the hierarchy. The Devourers would reach them in 3 weeks. "We can defend the colony," Nexus Prime said, "but our nearest fleet is 2 weeks away. If humanity wishes to prove itself, here is an opportunity. Your ships, working alongside Vena and hierarchy forces, could reach the Tlaran world first. You could organize the defense until our main fleet arrives." President Morris did not hesitate. "We will do it." The strike force was put together quickly. The Pacific Guardian and Armstrong from Earth, the Morning, Wind from the Vena, and 3 hierarchy escort frigates, crewed by a species called the Krell. The Krell were expert tacticians who had been fighting Devourers for generations. Admiral Hamilton took overall command, with Captain Paul Hayes as his tactical coordinator. The journey to the Tlaran colony world took 8 days at maximum FTL speed. When they arrived, they found a peaceful planet of rolling farmland and small cities. The Tlaran were not prepared for what was coming. "We have 3 weeks," Greg said, looking at the displays. "We need to turn this colony into a fortress." What happened next would be studied for years as a model for how different species could work together. Human engineers worked with Tlaran architects to build shield generators around major population centers. The Krell trained local defense forces in evacuation procedures and basic combat tactics. The Vena, with their advanced sensor technology, set up an early warning network throughout the system. Danny Morrison and Karen Phillips coordinated communications across all the species involved. Their experience with the initial alien contact proved valuable. Helen Carter helped set up medical stations that could treat injuries from 5 different biological systems. Every day, they watched the countdown get closer to 0. The Devourers arrived exactly on schedule. 7 ships dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. These were not the crude harvester vessels humanity had first met. These were warships built for destruction, covered in weapons and armor taken from hundreds of previous victims. All ships, battle stations, Greg ordered. Claren civilians, begin evacuation to the underground shelters. This is it, people. Let us show them what happens when the galaxy stands together. The battle for the Claren colony world lasted 16 hours. The combined force fought with everything they had. They used tactics that mixed human aggression, Vena technology, and Krell strategy. The Pacific Guardian, scarred but still fighting, led daring hit-and-run attacks that drew Devourer ships away from the colony. The Armstrong, not built for combat, used its powerful sensors to coordinate targeting across the entire fleet. The Morning Wind and the Krell frigates held the line, their shields and weapons creating a barrier the Devourers could not easily break. On the surface of the colony world, the Claren fought too. They defended their homes with a fierceness that surprised everyone. When the Hierarchy main fleet arrived, led by a massive dreadnought called the Infinite Reach, they found the Devourer force retreating. 3 of the 7 enemy ships had been destroyed. The remaining 4 were badly damaged. The colony was safe. Nexus Prime personally commanded the Infinite Reach. When the battle was won, the ancient being opened a channel to Admiral Hamilton. It seems humanity has proven itself, Admiral. Welcome to the Hierarchy, officially. Back on Earth, the news was met with celebration and worry. Humanity was no longer alone. They had allies, friends among the stars. But they also had enemies. The war against the Devourers would be long and costly. President Morris addressed the United Earth Council from the Armstrong. Her image was broadcast across the planet. We answered a call for help that was not meant for us. In doing so, we found our place in a galaxy that is older, stranger, and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Yes, there are dangers out there. Yes, we will have to fight for our survival, but we will not fight alone. The Vena stand with us. The Hierarchy stands with us. And I believe that as we move forward, we will find others who share our values, others who believe that cooperation is stronger than isolation, that mercy is not weakness, and that when someone calls for help, you answer, even if they dialed the wrong number. In the years that followed, humanity took its place as a full member of the Hierarchy. Earth's solar system was fortified, becoming a stronghold against Devourer attacks. Human ships served alongside dozens of other species, exploring strange new worlds and defending those who could not defend themselves. The war continued, as it had for countless generations. But humanity had learned something important in those first chaotic months after the Vena distress call. They learned that the universe was vast and full of wonders. They learned that not all aliens were friends, but some were. They learned that courage and compassion mattered, even on a galactic scale. And they learned that sometimes the most important calls are the ones that were not meant for you, because those are the calls that define who you really are. Danny Morrison and Karen Phillips eventually returned to Earth as heroes, but they did not stay long. Within a year, they were back in space, this time on a new exploration vessel, continuing their work of listening to the stars and building bridges between species. Captain Paul Hayes was promoted to Admiral and given command of Earth's growing deep space fleet. He never forgot those 8 people who died defending the Pacific Guardian against Devourer borders. Their names were inscribed on a memorial at Earth Command headquarters along with a simple phrase. They answered the call. Dr. Helen Carter became the head of the Human Vena Technology Exchange Program. She spent half her time on Earth and half on the Wandering Song, which remained in orbit around Mars as a symbol of the friendship between the 2 species. The Vena had decided not to continue their journey. They had found a home, they said, with humanity. Admiral Greg Hamilton retired after 5 years, satisfied that Earth's defenses were strong and its place in the Hierarchy was secure. In his retirement speech, he said something that would be quoted for generations. We were found by accident. We could have turned away. We could have stayed hidden. But we chose to answer. We chose to help. And in doing so, we became something greater than we were before. President Morris served 2 terms and then stepped down, but she remained active in galactic politics, serving as Earth's ambassador to the Hierarchy Council. She worked tirelessly to strengthen the bonds between species and to find peaceful solutions to conflicts whenever possible. Captain Sorrel of the Vena lived for many more years. He became a teacher, instructing young Vena about the day their people's distress call was answered by a species they had never heard of. He taught them about humanity's courage and kindness. And he taught them that in a dangerous galaxy, friends were the most valuable thing you could have. On Station Outreach 7, now massively upgraded and surrounded by defense platforms, new officers kept watch on the cosmos. They listened to the stars, searching for signals, waiting for the next call that might change everything. And if it came, they would answer. Because that was what humanity did now. That was who they had become. The Devourers remained a threat, but they were no longer advancing. The combined forces of the hierarchy, strengthened by humanity's addition, had pushed them back. Slowly, system by system, the tide was turning. New species were discovered. Some joined the hierarchy. Others chose to remain independent but friendly. The galaxy was a complicated place full of different cultures and beliefs. But increasingly it was also a place where cooperation was valued over conquest. Humanity brought something special to the galactic community. They brought their adaptability, their creativity, their refusal to give up even when things looked impossible. But most importantly, they brought their simple belief that helping others was always the right thing to do. The Tlaran never forgot that humans had stood with them when the Devourers came. They erected a monument in their capital city, a tall spire that could be seen from orbit. It depicted 5 species standing together: humans, Vena, Krell, Tlaran, and others, united against the darkness. The inscription at the base was written in many languages. But the message was simple. We stand together. Years turned into decades. Children who had been born the day the Vena distress call arrived grew up in a universe where aliens were normal. They learned multiple languages. They studied on worlds light years from Earth. They served on ships with crews from a dozen different species. The wrong number call, as it came to be known, became one of the most famous moments in human history. Admiral Greg Hamilton had been in the military for over 30 years. He had seen combat in 3 different wars. He had commanded troops in dangerous places, but nothing in all those years had prepared him for this moment. He stood in the crisis center in Geneva, watching the alien transmission play for the 6th time. Around him, people worked frantically. Scientists tried to understand the signal. Language experts worked on translation. Military planners prepared for every possibility they could think of. The room buzzed with urgent voices and the sound of computers processing impossible data. "Play it again," Greg ordered. A young officer nodded and restarted the sequence. Once more, Greg watched the mathematical patterns unfold on the screen. He listened to the computer's translation of the Vena distress call. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Every choice he made now would matter for generations. Commander Lisa Brennan walked up to him with a tablet computer. "Sir, we confirmed the second signal, the hostile one that appeared after the Vena probe. Our code experts think it is some kind of targeting scan." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means whoever these Devourers are, they followed the Vena distress call right to our doorstep. They know we are here now." Greg had commanded soldiers in dangerous situations before. He had made hard choices, but this was different. Humanity was not ready for contact with aliens. They definitely were not ready for contact during someone else's war. "What ships do we have in deep space?" Lisa checked her tablet. "We have 2 survey ships in the outer solar system, the Magellan and the Lewis Clark. Both are science vessels with very few weapons. The nearest military ship is the destroyer Pacific Guardian. It is on patrol near the asteroid belt. Get me Captain Hayes on the Pacific Guardian immediately." "Yes, sir." Greg walked to the big display screen on the wall. It showed the whole solar system. Station Outreach 7 was marked in blue. The Vena probe location was marked in amber. A red marker showed where the hostile signal had come from, somewhere between Neptune and the edge of the solar system. President Catherine Morris entered the room with her security team. Everyone stood up straight, but she waved them to relax. Admiral Hamilton, tell me we are not looking at an invasion. Madam President, honestly, I do not know what we are looking at. But I can tell you this. We have one unknown alien species asking for help. We have another unknown alien species that seems dangerous. Both are in our cosmic backyard. What can we do? Not much. We can try to talk more with the Vena. We can try to find out what kind of help they need. We can put our military ships between Earth and these possible threats, and we can hope this conflict does not involve us. But you do not believe that last part, do you, Admiral? Greg met her eyes. No, Madam President, I do not. The moment we answered that distress call, we involved ourselves. Over the next 6 hours, humanity scrambled. The Pacific Guardian changed course, racing toward Neptune's orbit at maximum speed. The science ships Magellan and Lewis Clark were ordered back to Earth. At Station Outreach 7, Danny Morrison and Karen Phillips continued their conversation with an alien civilization that had found them by accident. The Vena probe had learned more of Earth's languages. Now it could communicate more clearly. Through careful questions and answers, Danny and Karen learned the full story. The Vena came from a world called Vane, located 12 light-years from Earth. They traveled in huge ships that held entire communities, thousands of people living together in space. Their ship, the Wandering Song, had been exploring an area they had never seen before when they met the Devourers. The Devourers were not really a species. They were more like a group mind. They took resources and technology from everyone they met. They even took biological matter, consuming other races to grow stronger. The Vena had tried to run away, but the Devourer ships were faster. In desperation, they sent out their emergency call through a faster-than-light relay, aiming for hierarchy space. But they hit Earth instead. They are asking if we can help, Karen said. Her voice was tight with emotion. Danny, their ship is badly damaged. They have families on board, children. Danny looked at the translation on his screen. The Vena were not asking for weapons or soldiers. They were asking for shelter. They wanted to know if Earth could protect their people while their ship was fixed. We cannot make that decision, Danny said. I know, but someone has to. The decision came from the very top. President Morris called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Representatives from every nation that was part of the United Earth Space Coalition gathered. The debate was fierce and went on for hours. Some people argued that humanity should not get involved in an alien war. It was not their fight. Others said that helping people in need was always the right thing to do. Still others worried about security. What if the Vena were not what they seemed? What if letting them near Earth was dangerous? In the end, it was Admiral Hamilton who gave the speech that changed minds. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a choice that will define what humanity means in the galaxy. We can close our doors and hope this goes away, or we can stand up and show the universe that when someone calls for help, Earth answers, even if they dialed the wrong number. The vote was close. Many people were scared. Many were unsure. But in the end, the authorization came through. Earth would offer sanctuary to the Vena. The Pacific Guardian would serve as an escort, guiding the Wandering Song to a safe place near Mars where human and Vena engineers could work together to fix their ship. There was just one problem. The Devourers had other plans. Back at Station Outreach 7, Danny and Karen watched their screens with growing concern. The hostile signal was moving. It was getting stronger, and it seemed to be heading in the same direction as the Vena ship. They are hunting them, Karen said. The Devourers are following the Wandering Song. Danny sent an urgent message to Earth Command. Then he opened a channel to the Vena probe. Wandering Song, this is Earth Station Outreach 7. The hostile force is tracking you. You need to move faster. The reply came quickly. Earth Station, this is Vena Captain Soral of the Wandering Song. We are traveling at maximum speed, but our engines are damaged. We cannot go faster. The Devourers will catch us before we reach your Mars. Danny looked at Karen. She looked back at him. They both understood what this meant. The Pacific Guardian was going out to meet the Wandering Song. It would arrive first. And if the Devourers caught up before the Vena ship reached safety, there would be a fight. How long until the Pacific Guardian gets there? Karen asked. Danny checked the numbers. 3 days. The Wandering Song will arrive in 5 days if they can maintain current speed. The Devourer ship will catch them in 4 days. So the Pacific Guardian will have to hold them off alone. Yes. On Earth, Admiral Hamilton received the same information. He stood in the crisis center, looking at the display showing all three ships converging on the same point in space. The Pacific Guardian was a good ship with a good crew, but it was a destroyer, built for patrol work and minor conflicts. It was not designed to fight unknown alien warships. He opened a secure channel to the Pacific Guardian. "Captain Hayes, this is Admiral Hamilton." Paul Hayes appeared on the screen. He was a career military officer, steady and reliable. "Yes, sir. Paul, you have seen the projections. The Devourer ship will catch the Wandering Song before they reach safety. You are going to be the only thing between them and several thousand innocent Vena civilians." "I understand, sir." "Your orders are to protect the Wandering Song at all costs. Buy them time to reach Mars orbit. But Paul, if the situation becomes impossible, if you are clearly outmatched, you are authorized to withdraw. We cannot afford to lose you and your crew." Paul Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "With respect, sir, we did not come all this way to run. If those Devourers want the Vena, they will have to go through us first." Greg felt a surge of pride. "Good luck, Captain." "Thank you, sir." The connection ended. Greg stood in the crisis center surrounded by worried faces. Everyone there knew what was about to happen. Everyone understood that humanity was about to fight its first battle with an alien force, and nobody knew how it would end. President Morris stood beside him. "Do you think they can win?" "I think they will do everything possible. Paul Hayes is a good captain. His crew is well trained, but we are going into this blind. We do not know what weapons the Devourers have. We do not know their tactics. We do not even know what they really are, but we know they hurt the Vena badly. Yes, we know that." The next 3 days passed slowly for everyone, watching from Earth. Danny and Karen maintained communication with both the Wandering Song and the Pacific Guardian. The Vena ship sent them images and data about their people. Humanity saw for the first time what the Vena looked like. They were unlike anything from Earth, with bodies that looked almost like plants with many limbs extending from a central core. But their messages were warm and grateful. They thanked Earth for answering their call. They promised friendship if they survived. The Pacific Guardian raced through space, pushing its engines to maximum. The crew prepared for combat, checking weapons and running battle drills. They had trained for years, but always against human opponents. Now they would face something completely unknown.